Okay. Presentation of the layered uh, view, architectural view of HumanaEthica. Actually, this is very typical, so it doesn't only apply to HumanaEthica, applies to most of these type of applications, of web applications. Anyway, you just put the specific files that you will find related with the example we're gonna use in HumanaEthica to teach you. So basically, you have several layers. So you have a layered style. So you have a data access layer where you have the code that accesses the repository. Then you have a domain model layer where you have the business logic, and we'll see the invariants. And so it's where is the domain that actually reads information from the database and process information and write it back in the database. Then there's a service layer that actually is invoked from outside and controls the accesses to the domain layer, for instance, to make it transactional, these accesses. Then you have a REST service layer that is on top of this service layer that adds to this transactional behavior remote invocation behavior, so where you have web services. And finally, you have a presentation layer that is in the client, runs in the browser, in JavaScript, and these uses the web services layer. So here you have the technologies we are going to use. This is the Java persistent access to access the database. This is object-oriented Java, pure Java. This is our GPA again with the transactionals part. And then you have web services. So we are going to use basically Spring Boot here for this. And you need to define these classes that I will describe you. Here, for the communication between the service layers and the REST application layer, we're going to use the DTOs, data transfer objects. And from the REST service layer, the presentation, the system uses JSON objects. Then we're going to use tests, and we're going to have here a layer a test domain layer that invokes and tests the business logic in the domain layer. You have a service test layer that basically invokes the services and tests them, and you have a REST service layer that basically you test the web services. And on top of all, we have end-to-end test layer, and end test layer basically exercises the interfaces, the UI, user interfaces, so that everything is invoked and backend we test the system as a whole. For the test, we are going to use Spock here, okay, and we are going to use Cypress there, okay. Now, very quickly, I'm going to just show how these correspond in the code, but for the case of activity. So, if you open, so you have your code here. If you open the activity, we'll see the domain, and we have activity there. So this corresponds to this, okay? If you want to see the activity repository, it is here, activity repository, okay? If you want to see the activity service, here, you have the activity services there, okay? And the activity controller is there, so it corresponds to this one, okay? And the DTOs, you can find the DTOs there for activity as well, it's there. So we have the activity DTO there. So these basically are the classes that for the case of activity, of course, for the other domain entities, you have similar things, but you basically map them with these layers, okay? For this test part, basically, we go and you have, oh, sorry, not yet. For this test part, you have this Groovy, and you have activity here, so it is below, and the test, or nested inside the test directory, you have the domain tests, so these are create activity test and other tests, so basically just wrote there an example, which is done, create activity method test, okay? Then you have, sorry, then you have the service tests, for instance, the register activity service test, and this is there. And finally, you have the web service tests, for instance, the register activity web service IT, which is there. For this part, okay, actually I use a different IDE. So for this part, we have, for instance, the models here. And for instance, you have the activity model. We are going to use TypeScript, so it's there. And for instance, the activity dialog, that is a view. We are going to learn Vue.js, which is the technology you are going to use. And basically, if you want to use a view, we'll find, for instance, in this case, for the member activity dialog view. Okay. And on top, you have the Cypress tests. So it's in another folder. You need to go to tests, end to end. And in specs, you're going to find, for instance, this test. Okay, that's a Cypress test. Okay, and it's there. So that's all.